So there were three very interesting presentations. I have some questions for you, maybe for all of you. I think that you all have some ideas about it. Because what was a hot topic, like for instance, especially in the first two presentations, is this idea of radical innovation or radical ideas about the future. And in the reader that you all got, there's an article from Sebastian Gruss who says that one of the characteristics of memory in the 21st century is that it's an increasingly mediated process of fictionalization that undermines the possibility of authentic, original remembering. And after your presentations, I feel like this has always been the case. That has always been a fictionalized idea of the future. And I was wondering, can we break this, or is this just, are we just tied to the past as a cultural reference?
Well,
yeah, can you use the microphone?
If you say an increasing process of fictionalization, increasing in relation to what? I mean, if we go back to the Middle Ages or even earlier, to really prehistoric times, you could say that most of what we are supposed to consider reality was fiction to begin with. I mean, we've always projected virtual worlds onto the world as we experience and see it. The whole idea that the world is full with ghosts and mysterious figures that you don't see but you feel and you know they're there. You know, go back to so-called primitive people, and you'll see a virtual world that really outdoes and probably outsmarts anything you've ever seen. So the idea of fictionalization is, I would say, ingrained in our very sensorium, in our very system. So increased process of fictionalization, maybe the processes of fictionalization that we are using anyway to cope with the reality are changing. The processes may be changing, but that we fictionalize is, like I said, is sort of built into our genes.
Yeah, so it's part of our nature.
Yes.
I also think that, let's say, the science fiction is directly linked to fiction, to science.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, science is rationalizing our existence, our let's say, environment, and science fiction is derationalizing. It's like in religion. You always have to have a fictional part. Mm-hmm. So we cannot, which is utopian or dystopian, but like religion had incorporated in its system the fictional part. The angels, the devils, that was one theory, you could say, and the rational part. Science has only the rational but not the fictional. So you have to have science fiction, otherwise, where is there was a pressure valve needed for that, and also sorry, and I think every media is by definition fiction. So a book, a painting, games, architecture is all fiction. So we all, with every media edit, we increase, of course, another fiction to reality.
Yeah. No, I agree with previous speakers. So we needed to shape your future to fictionalize, and you can do it through, for instance, to stories or to visuals, all kinds of. And what you see now, that technology, the enhancement in technology, provide that they come, well, maybe not closer together in our head, but the technologies are there to superimpose these dreams or these stories or the visuals on a real life, and you can discuss this of what the influence of is that, or does that then create a new reality? And that's an interesting discussion which we could make. Or does it stay different? Does it stay separated?
Yeah, so maybe one of you can want to go into that discussion.
Well, you remark from...
Yes. Yeah, I really object to the method of reasoning here, because if you start to talk about fiction as this wonderful project to help us in the future, I would like to remind you of the present day, where one of the people behind maybe the next American President, Trump, says that he has no, well, I'm just boiling it down here, he has no place for knowledge. Knowledge is not interesting. What we believe is interesting, and what we think is interesting. So that's really the gut feeling which is sort of commanding us today, and which is taking us into the future at a speed and in a way that I find not particularly pleasant. So this is a fiction that I hope we can undermine, and I think just to say that it should be fictional is not enough. There has to be something else there as well.
But every fiction has also a dark fiction.
Yeah.
It's like what religion has had hell, science, since shortly with our doom scenarios about the global warming and so, we have also hell, but for a long time, I mean, I think science has always hell, but it's not the fictional hell. So science fiction also has, I mean, every Batman movie has this, I think it's Batman with Joker, or is it Superman with, I'm not so into these things. But there's always a Joker, a bad guy. So this dark fiction always needs to, is there.
Mm-hmm. But that has been always the case. What you see in the relationship between fiction and argumentation, so to speak, is waves. And if I heard you correctly, you say that in the post-scientific era that we are in now, or no, you said that, yeah, feeling becomes more important. What I understood, feeling becomes more important in argumentation. So it's not...
Trump is pure...
Yeah, it is yeah. So he argues by, I feel this way. And he's not the only one. In that sense, you could say Trump is a symbol of of the post-scientific era, yeah. Or if you want to be really pessimistic, of a falling back to the era in which belief would be the ultimate argument. You know, God has ordained this, therefore it must be true. We thought we were over that for quite a while, but it seems to be coming back, this idea that simple proof or good argumentation is not enough anymore, that we need to have as you would call it, an affinity space to be able to move and to be able to act.
Well, that's interesting. I think it becomes simplistic, yeah, and that's also what is reflected in, let's say, our social media, where we can like and dislike, and also the interaction in games, for instance, have the same way of to oversimplify that.
Yeah. On the other hand, what I find very interesting about the urban design games that you referred to and showed partly, is that relatively simple interactions, like I want this, become really complex when the moment the amount of players increases and certain rules limit what you can do, which is of course
but what you do there is playing with rules. I mean, so there's a difference between there are predefined rules and then you can play with it, which is boring. It's just strategy. Yeah. You know, and that it has the easiest solution in a way, always the optimal solution. Yeah. But in these games, what you do is actually you're inventing the rules, and by talking about the rules, what it should be, or by
you're inventing rules. You say.
Yeah. You. I mean, it's not free play on its own. No, it's regulated play. So you're talking about regulations.
Yeah. And by organizing regulations and inventing rules, you actually shape the real space around you, or that's the possibility. The idea of playing the city is to really build it.
Yeah, and of course, this is then you can ask yourself what comes out of it, but it enriches, and that's what we spoke about, for instance, with Trump. That I mean, it enlarges our thinking space instead of diminishing our thinking space.
Yeah.
There is a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed your different presentations on imagery of the future. And the question that pops in my mind is what does an imagery of the future look like that doesn't build on nostalgia, that takes into account the new uses of technologies and the new forms of social life and culture. I mean, I'm still looking for an imagery of the future that would inspire.
Well,
thank you.
From my point of view, the easy answer is, because I'm not a designer or artist, that's up to you. And I'm really, really curious what you're going to do. What I said before, we do need new visual languages for that, because what we've seen over the last couple of decades is a rehashing, a recycling, a repetition, a reuse of existing visual languages to the point that they become, or threaten to become, rather empty. So one of my favorite examples is the visual language of the early avant-gardes of the 1910s and 20s. There you see that a new way of looking at the world and organizing the world and a new ideology about the world went hand in hand with the invention of a truly new visual language. Of course, there's always references to older ideas, but here there's a beautiful congruence, you could say, between the ideology, the idea of how we see the world, and the visual language that really expresses that. Now that's interesting to look into how that works, because nowadays if we see a house or a building or almost any object made in the modernistic style from the 1910s or 20s, we will recognize it as, okay, now that represents that mentality. It is because the visual language and the object have become combined. It's not that, it's not necessary,
I think, and
so what could be a new visual language, a new way?
Yeah, but I
of
mean,
doing
what me struck in what you say, and the question there is that you speak of nouns, so things, visuals are things, and the question was, what's the language? So I would like to say there's more verbs. So what's the interaction on it? So interaction is, I think, the new thing. Yeah. It's not something that, I mean, it's not statical. It's dynamical. So it has
that answer you formulated in language terms very well was perhaps implicit in the last examples that I showed, because that's using things that are already there, but actively placing them in a new context, which, in a sense, provokes or triggers a new visual language.
Okay, so was that an answer to your question? Yeah? You also want to make it come up?
Yeah. The short one, I think we have to be able to imagine a better future. So that triggers a new language. I mean, if we ask ourselves really, really well, we cannot imagine that it's much better. So there's no radical better future. Maybe just instead of a Subaru, Mercedes, but it's not a radical change. It's not like in modernity, light, air, and sun, democratization of living and so. The iPhone, I could not have imagined but somebody imagined a smartphone. So imagined a radical difference. And I think the radical difference, to imagine that's quite tricky or quite difficult.
But no one, I think, imagined what you could do with that. Not even Jonathan Ive or Steve Jobs. Don't you agree? I mean, they imagined the gadget, and of course their imagination went far beyond what people would expect from a smartphone at the time, and they combined a lot of gadgets that were already there into a new system, but they could not, I don't think they could have ever imagined.
Hope. I think that gives us hope, because you say it creates possibilities or opportunities to do something. Yes. That's interesting. So are we, as users, so creative that we use these tools in a good way? So do we use our language or our interactions in a way that empowers or frees ourselves in the way you express we want to hope for a better world?
Yeah, because now the future is promised as the past. like Trump or a lot of people we have on stage now. I mean about the imagination of a better future in general, not us, but as a society. And Trump promises, I think, better or greater America as it was 20 years ago. So he goes back
again. Make America great again. This is this 1950s dream of
So we can't escape like nostalgia. It's always kind of part of our.
I think we should.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we keep repeating things, and we get into what I think it was Rudolf Mannheim called he described it as hell, a world in which nothing happens, in which everything has already happened and it keeps repeating itself. A world which you could say functions like a record that is stuck in the groove, right? That sounds pretty hellish to me.
But there's one fundamental thing is we like to make the world bigger in our communications, and I sort of oppose to that. I personally want to make the world smaller. Mm-hmm. I would like to sometimes in personal space I would like to dive under my blankets and dream away. Now what we do is we grab all kinds of iPhones and present it to the whole world. Mm-hmm. So we have the sort of a unified dream or unified. That to me is. It's not a good thing, mm-hmm. because it makes us average. Yeah. And so I would like to see a visual language which personalizes, or a language which personalizes much
mm-hmm.
more.
Yeah, or a musical language. I was a bit irritated by the music under your last clip that kept repeating.
Everybody was irritated, by the way.
Yeah, because we couldn't hear you.
It was the last section, but everybody was irritated when I did this. So I would be really happy to see why people are so irritated.
Because first of all, it prevented us from hearing what you were talking about.
No, I was blabbing around. Okay, but now I was.
And then second, it sort of projects a kind of very shallow heroism onto what we see that almost over voices what is actually going on there. I mean, people are doing seemingly interesting things, and all we hear is the world's going to know your name. Fuck that.
So, any other questions? That's one.
I was wondering, you talk about imagination, but I was wondering what is the role of facts in the future? I mean, you talk about the future, but there are things going on now that we cannot deny. So how do you combine facts with
future
fiction?
Facts are unknown unknowns.
No, but you take what we know now, and we can talk about like global warming and like the climate change. You cannot deny that. So how does the world? How do you shape a world taking into account that we know stuff that probably is going to happen, or on a scale? Do you understand what I'm asking? It's a very big question, but it's a bit about what you are saying. You cannot talk about the future without just talking about it as a narrative, because
in practical ways it goes in very practical to the bricklayer or to the architect. I mean, global warming, less insulation, more insulation, higher dikes, lower dikes. Future becomes then present and is dealt very pragmatically with, mostly. I mean, of course, we can now deal with it, and it is dealt with, if it's good or if it's enough or not. I don't know. I mean, we can do much, much better than we do. But I think that the general, let's say, part of society looks mostly, I mean, politicians look 4 years. I don't know how people, what their time span is, but maybe 2 or 3 years or maximum 10 years ahead. That's the future people plan with. I don't know. I mean,
the big businesses tend to look 20 years ahead.
Okay, yeah.
And then after that, things become really, really blurry, or pure speculation.
Scientists look further ahead.
Yeah.
There's quite some alarming news from scientists for the year 2050, where both the water levels are so high that even big cities like Rome are threatened, and there will be a major outbreak of viruses because antibiotics have become, or viruses, bacteria have become immune to antibiotics. So we're going to have a lot of fun around 2050.
Okay, are there any other questions? No, I think we're running out of time. Do you have to, are there any remarks, or do you want to get back to something?
I was a bit irritated by your remarks.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you can.
Well, about the heroistic tone in it, yeah, that's true. But that also depends on scale. So I like everybody to be a hero in a small world. If you want to be a hero of America and then do security issues, yeah, you're right. So I don't think you can put this on one pile. So you have to respect people in their own worlds and let them be heroes. So that's not I think the right criticism on. You can be critical upon it, but I don't think that was the right criticism.
I was critical about the style of music, which in my view is but yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I totally agree with what you just said.
I have one more remark about this heroism, that there is a kind of this positive, that everybody sells himself as a hero. I think what would be good is to accept bad images on Facebook and the ugliness and this, because everything is so beautiful and so perfect and everybody is a hero. Yeah, I'm not convinced if this helps us for the future.
Okay.
I may have one closing remark. What I find we heard critical remarks and some doubts even on this increasing process of fictionalization or the changing processes of fictionalization. What I think is really, really important, as is shown in also projects that you showed, is that this fictionalization gives us, and the technologies around it and the new interactive spaces that are being designed for it, gives us a new tool for basically utopian imagination. So that can connect back to what we've always done, but with new ways, with new means, new communication tools, and perhaps, hopefully, and now I'm getting really idealistic, more effectively than we've done ever before.
Okay, thank you. That makes, after the break, we now have a 20-minute break, and after the break we will hear more about dystopian futures. So thank you.
Thank you.